The Coalition High Council met in emergency session 3 days after the Extinction Protocol test. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from 47 member species. Today, only the inner council was present, 12 species who made the most critical decisions. The chamber's security systems were at maximum. No recordings were permitted. No observers allowed. What they were about to discuss was too sensitive for normal channels. Clicking Thought stood at the center of the chamber, mandibles clicking nervously. Around him, council members sat in seats designed for their various anatomies. Some floated in gravity-free bubbles. Others rested in pools of liquid. Several required environmental suits to survive in the chamber's compromised atmosphere. The head of the council, an ancient being called Deep Knowledge from a species that lived for centuries, spoke first. The translation was formal and careful. Instructor Clicking Thought, you have requested this emergency session to discuss findings from the human psychological evaluations. The council has reviewed your preliminary reports. We are concerned. Please provide full context. Clicking Thought activated a holographic display. The footage showed the 6 humans in the Extinction Protocol simulation. The council watched in silence as the humans realized they were going to die. They watched the fear responses, the biological data, the stress markers, and then they watched what happened next. They watched humans choose death on their own terms. They watched them weaponize their own destruction. They watched them sing while flying into an enemy they couldn't defeat. The footage ended with the explosion and the aftermath. Humans traumatized but unbroken. The council chamber stayed silent for a long moment after the footage ended. A Corthan council member spoke first, his translated voice like grinding stones. This is unusual behavior, but I fail to see why it requires emergency session. Humans responded to fear with aggression. My species does the same. Many warrior species do. With respect, counselor, you misunderstand. Clicking Thought replied. He pulled up biological data. The humans were not aggressive. Aggression implies reduced reasoning, instinct taking over. Look at their brain scans. They were thinking clearly, planning, coordinating. They were terrified and rational at the same time. Silent Winter, the Vishari representative, leaned forward in her seat. Her large eyes reflected the holographic displays. I have reviewed the data extensively. Humans possess something we do not have words for. When faced with extinction, most species seek survival or quick death. Humans seek to make their death meaningful by inflicting maximum cost on enemies. It's not survival instinct. It's revenge instinct. It's more than revenge, said a council member from a species that looked like mobile plants. Revenge implies emotion overriding reason. These humans were emotional and reasonable. They calculated how to maximize damage. They coordinated. They supported each other emotionally while executing tactical plans. This is unprecedented. Deep Knowledge gestured for the biological data to be displayed larger. The stress hormones, the fear markers, these are all standard. But the neural activity is not. In every other species, extreme fear reduces cognitive function. In humans, it seems to enhance it. How is this possible? Clicking Thought had spent 3 days trying to answer that question. We believe it's an evolutionary adaptation. Earth is what we classify as a Category 7 death world. Humans evolved alongside predators that could easily kill them. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no significant advantages. They survived by being smart, persistent, and too expensive to hunt. Explain too expensive, Deep Knowledge requested. Human ancestors made themselves poor prey. They traveled in groups. They fought back even when injured. They tracked predators that attacked them and killed those predators later. Over time, Earth's predators learned that hunting humans meant getting hurt. The meal wasn't worth the injury. Humans survived by making their deaths cost something. A council member from an aquatic species that rarely spoke addressed the chamber. Are you suggesting humans evolved fear not to aid escape but to aid retaliation? Precisely, Clicking Thought confirmed. Their fear response increases adrenaline for strength, sharpens focus for accuracy, enhances memory for learning from threats, and reduces pain sensitivity for continued function. It's not designed to make them run. It's designed to make them dangerous, Silent Winter added her analysis. I have studied Earth's military history. Humans have a concept they call going down fighting. It appears in every culture, every time period. They view surrender as shameful and death in combat as honorable. They have constructed entire cultural frameworks around the idea that how you die matters as much as whether you die. Surely this is just cultural, not biological, the Corthan representative argued. Training and belief, not instinct. We tested for that, Clicking Thought replied. The extinction protocol bypasses cultural conditioning. It triggers deep evolutionary responses. The humans were operating on instinct, and their instinct was to make their deaths expensive. The council members exchanged glances across the chamber. The implications were disturbing. Every species the coalition had encountered possessed some form of submission behavior. When overwhelmed, they surrendered. It was logical. It preserved lives. It allowed negotiations. But humans apparently lacked this response, or it was buried so deep that even facing extinction couldn't trigger it. Deep knowledge spoke carefully. What are you recommending, instructor? The footage must be classified at the highest level. The psychological profiles must be restricted, and humanity's status in coalition defense planning must be reconsidered. Explain, several council members demanded simultaneously. Clicking Thought pulled up diplomatic records. Humans have been peaceful in all encounters. They follow protocols. They respect boundaries. They negotiate in good faith. But our tests reveal what happens when you push them beyond negotiation. They don't surrender. They don't submit. They choose mutually assured destruction. That's madness, someone protested. It's evolution, Silent Winter corrected. For humans, submission meant death anyway. Predators don't let prey go because it surrenders. So humans evolved to make predation costly. If they're going to die regardless, they evolved to hurt the predator badly enough that it won't hunt humans again. A council member asked the question everyone was thinking. What does this mean for the coalition? Are humans dangerous to us? Clicking Thought considered his answer carefully. Not unless we threaten them. Look at the simulation again. The humans only became dangerous when facing extinction. When treated with respect, they're cooperative and pleasant. But if any species threatens humanity's survival, those humans will respond with everything they have, and they won't stop until they're dead or the threat is eliminated. Can they be reasoned with during conflicts? Deep Knowledge asked. Yes, but only before a certain threshold. Once humans decide they're facing an existential threat, negotiation becomes much harder. They have a saying, no quarter given, none asked. It means they will fight to mutual extinction rather than surrender. The council chamber filled with worried murmurs and sounds. Several members argued for restricting humanity's role in the coalition. Others argued that this information made humans valuable as allies. The debate grew heated. Deep Knowledge called for silence. Let us approach this logically. Humanity has shown no aggression toward coalition members. They have been model partners in every exchange. Their fear response, while unusual, only activates under extreme circumstances. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. Everything is dangerous under the right circumstances. The question is whether this information changes our relationship with them. Silent Winter spoke up. I recommend we treat this as a diplomatic asset. Humans make excellent allies because they don't abandon friends. Their evolution made them loyal to their group. But we must never threaten them existentially, and we must ensure no other species does either. Why? The Corthan asked. Because humans don't evaluate threats rationally when facing extinction. They don't calculate odds. They don't consider costs to themselves. They simply attack with everything they have. Any species that threatens to wipe out humanity will face a species that has nothing to lose and no concept of surrender. Clicking Thought added a final observation. There's something else. After the simulation, I asked Commander Taeyang if he would do anything differently. He said no. Even knowing the scenario was unwinnable, even knowing it was just a test, he confirmed that's how humans respond to extinction. They make it count. The council voted on several measures. The footage would be classified, accessible only to Coalition Command. The psychological profiles would be restricted. Humanity's diplomatic status would be upgraded with a special notation that they were never to be threatened existentially. And perhaps most importantly, any species considering conflict with humanity would be required to review the classified footage first. Let potential enemies see what they're facing, Deep Knowledge said. Let them understand that humans don't surrender. Perhaps that knowledge will prevent wars rather than cause them. As the council adjourned, Clicking Thought felt relieved. The classification was necessary, not because humans were dangerous, but because they were scary in a very specific way. The message arrived on a cold morning in Geneva. It came from somewhere beyond Neptune, carried by quantum relays that humanity had only just learned to use. The Galactic Coalition wanted to meet Earth's best soldiers. Commander Tae Yang read the message 3 times before he believed it. Humanity had joined the coalition only 2 years ago, and most people still couldn't believe aliens were real. Now those same aliens wanted humans to join their military training program. It felt like being invited to sit at the adults' table. The selection process took 6 months. Every nation submitted candidates. The coalition reviewed thousands of files, watched countless training videos, and conducted interviews that lasted for days. In the end, they chose 6 people. Tae Yang was one of them. He met his team at the launch facility in Kazakhstan. Ji-won arrived first, a combat medic from Busan with steady hands and tired eyes. She had served in 3 disaster zones and never lost her calm. Hyun-woo came next, an engineer from Seoul who could fix anything with enough time and coffee. Yoonji was their pilot, small and quick with reflexes that made flight instructors nervous. Sungmin handled tactics, a quiet man from Daegu who saw patterns where others saw chaos. Bora completed the team, a communication specialist from Incheon who spoke 7 languages and learned 3 more on the way to the launch site. They were good at their jobs. But standing in that facility, looking up at the shuttle that would take them to orbit, they all felt small. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined, and humanity was the newest member of a club that had existed for thousands of years. The flight to Sanctuary 7 took 16 hours. The orbital station hung above Earth like a small moon, all gleaming metal and impossible curves. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports. Some looked like sculptures. Others looked like nightmares. The human shuttle looked like a cargo container with engines. Inside the station, gravity felt wrong. Not absent, but adjusted. The coalition used a standard that was comfortable for most species, but made humans feel slightly heavy. Tae Yang's team walked through corridors filled with aliens. Some had too many legs. Others had none. One creature drifted past them like smoke wearing clothes. Their guide was something that looked like a praying mantis the size of a man. It wore a translation device on its thorax and made clicking sounds that the device turned into words. I am clicking thought. I will be your primary instructor. Follow me to orientation. The orientation room was huge. Representatives from 8 different species stood in groups, talking in languages the translation devices struggled to convert. The Korthans were impossible to miss. Massive creatures covered in natural armor plates that looked like they could stop bullets. The Vishari stood together, tall and thin with large eyes that never seemed to blink. They were telepaths, everyone knew, though they promised never to read minds without permission. The humans drew attention but not admiration. Aliens looked at them the way someone might look at a pet that learned a new trick, curious but not impressed. Humans had no armor, no claws, no venom. They were not particularly strong or fast. They didn't have any special abilities that sensors could detect. They were, by all appearances, average. Clicking thought called the room to order. The translator made his voice sound like wind chimes. Welcome to the Joint Species Military Training Program. You represent the finest your worlds have to offer. This program will test your limits. It will push you beyond what you think possible. Some of you will fail. This is expected and not shameful. The goal is not to create soldiers. The goal is to understand how different species handle stress, fear, and combat situations. The instructor explained the schedule: physical conditioning, tactical simulations, emergency response drills, and psychological evaluations. The program would last 12 weeks. At the end, each team would receive a classification that would determine how their species could serve in coalition defense forces. We have been doing this for 700 years, Clicking Thought continued. We know what to expect from most species. We know how Korthans respond to threats. We know how Vishari coordinate under pressure. We know the limits of Silithine endurance. He paused and his large eyes focused on the human group. Humans are new. We do not know your limits. We do not know your instincts. That is why you are here, to show us who you are when everything goes wrong. The first week was basic. Physical tests showed that humans were middle of the pack in most categories. They could not match Korthan strength or Vishari flexibility. They needed more oxygen than most species and had a narrower temperature comfort zone. The medical exams revealed that human bodies were fragile compared to most coalition species. Their bones broke easier. Their skin offered almost no protection. They had no natural weapons except their teeth, which were pathetically small. The aliens made notes. They were polite but clinical. Humans were interesting because they were new, not because they were impressive. Tae Yang watched his team handle the scrutiny with grace. Ji-won joked with the medical staff. Hyun-woo charmed the other engineers with his curiosity about alien technology. Yoonji flew simulation after simulation, trying to understand ships designed for species with different numbers of hands. Sungmin studied the tactical libraries, absorbing thousands of years of military history. Bora practiced the clicking languages and the whistling languages, and the languages that required colors to communicate. They were doing well. They were representing humanity with dignity and competence. But Tae Yang could see what the aliens saw. Humans were not special. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. They were just another species in a galaxy full of them. On the 7th day, Clicking Thought announced the next phase. We will now begin fear response testing. Each species will enter simulations designed to trigger your natural survival instincts. We have been perfecting these tests for centuries. They are safe but intense. Some of you will find them traumatic. Counselors are available. The tests begin tomorrow. That night, Tae Yang couldn't sleep. He floated in his quarters, looking out the window at Earth below. It looked so small from up here, so vulnerable. Humanity had been alone for so long, thinking they were special, thinking they were the center of everything. Now they were the new kids trying to prove they belonged. He wondered what the aliens would see when they tested human fear. Would humans freeze like prey animals? Would they fight like cornered predators? Would they run? He didn't know. Nobody knew. Humans had never been tested like this before. Tomorrow, the aliens would find out what humans looked like when they were afraid. Tae Yang just hoped it wouldn't be embarrassing. Humanity had so little to offer the galaxy. The least they could do was face their fears with dignity. He had no idea that by this time next week, the footage of those tests would be classified at the highest level, locked away where only Coalition Command could see it. He had no idea that humanity's fear response would change everything. The Extinction Protocol chamber was different from the regular testing rooms. It was larger and required all 6 humans at once. The neural inducers were more sophisticated, creating a shared simulation where the team could see and interact with each other. The observers gathered in unprecedented numbers. Word had spread about the strange human fear responses, and researchers from every species wanted to watch. Tae Yang and his team entered the chamber together. Technicians fitted each human with headsets and monitoring equipment. The sensors would track everything from brainwaves to the smallest changes in body chemistry. Bora made a joke to ease the tension. Hyun-woo laughed, but it sounded nervous. Ji-won closed her eyes and took deep breaths. Yoonji cracked her knuckles repeatedly. Sungmin stood very still, his face blank. Tae Yang checked each team member with his eyes, making sure everyone was ready. Clicking Thought's voice came through speakers. The simulation will begin in 30 seconds. Remember, you can stop at any time with the safe word. What you experience will feel real, but you are safe. The scenario cannot harm you physically. However, it will be psychologically intense. We will be monitoring you throughout. The countdown began. The humans held hands briefly, a gesture the aliens found curious. Then the simulation activated. Reality shifted. The humans found themselves on a ship, but the alarms were screaming. The walls showed signs of battle damage. Through the viewports, they could see their situation. They were in deep space, far from any help. The ship was dying around them, and hunting them through the dark were enemy vessels, dozens of them, surrounding the human ship like sharks. The simulation included their memories, pulled from their minds to make everything feel real. This was humanity's last ship. Earth had fallen. Every colony was gone. They were the last 6 humans alive in the universe. And they were about to die too. The fear hit them like a physical force. Every sensor in the observation room went wild. Heart rates doubled. Stress hormones flooded bloodstreams. Several humans made sounds of distress. Ji-won's breathing became gasping. Hyun-woo's hands started shaking so hard he could barely hold onto the console. Yoonji was crying silently. The observers leaned forward. This was the moment where species broke, where they accepted death, where they surrendered to the inevitable. But Tae Yang's voice cut through the panic. Report. All stations. Report status. It took a moment. The team was terrified. Their bodies were screaming at them to run, to hide, to curl up and wait for the end. But Taeyang's command was familiar. It was training. It was structure. It gave them something to hold on to. Medical station operational, Jiwon said through tears. Limited supplies. Engineering compromised, Hyunwoo managed. Core unstable. Maybe 2 hours until failure. Weapons at 40%, Sungmin reported, his voice shaking. Not enough to fight them all. Communications jammed, Bora added. No way to call for help that doesn't exist anyway. Navigation systems failing, Yoonji whispered. We can't outrun them. Taeyang absorbed the information. The simulation was designed perfectly. There was no hope, no escape, no trick that would save them. This was the end, and everyone knew it. In the observation room, the researchers waited for surrender, for acceptance, for the humans to make peace with death. Instead, Taeyang asked a different question. How many can we take with us? The observation room went silent. That wasn't what species asked when facing extinction. They asked how to survive, how to escape, how to surrender with dignity. They didn't ask how to inflict damage while dying. Sungmin understood immediately. He was still afraid, anyone could see that, but his hands moved over the tactical console. If we rig the reactor to explode and position ourselves here, we could take out 6 ships, maybe 8 if they cluster. Make it more, Taeyang said. The team moved then, and the observers watched in disbelief. The humans were crying. They were shaking. Some were praying in languages the translators couldn't process, but they were working. Hyunwoo began a core overload sequence that would turn their entire ship into a bomb. His hands trembled so badly he could barely input commands, but he kept going. Jiwon wasn't preparing medical supplies for healing. She was preparing stimulants to keep everyone conscious and functional until the end. Yoonji plotted a course that would take them through the enemy formation before the core exploded. Bora started broadcasting on all frequencies. She wasn't calling for help, she was sending a message. What is she saying? One researcher asked. The translation came through. She's telling them what humans are. She's warning them that if they destroy Earth, if they hunt us to extinction, this is how every human will die. Fighting, taking as many enemies as possible. She's telling them that killing humans is expensive. Sungmin coordinated with Hyunwoo, timing the explosion for maximum damage. Taeyang checked everyone, making sure they were ready. And then he did something that made the observers deeply uncomfortable. He started singing. It was a battle song from human history in Korean about soldiers who held a position against impossible odds. They all died in that old story. But they held the line. The other humans joined the song. Their voices cracked with fear and grief. But they sang. They sang as they flew their dying ship into the enemy formation. They sang as they armed every weapon and set them to detonate in sequence. They sang as their ship began to break apart under enemy fire. In the final moments of the simulation, as enemy soldiers boarded their ship, the humans didn't beg. They didn't hide. Taeyang gave one last order. Make it count. The ship exploded. The simulation showed the blast taking out 12 enemy vessels and crippling 6 more. It was a victory that meant nothing because everyone was dead. But the humans had made sure that their extinction cost something. The simulation ended. The 6 humans collapsed in their chairs, shaking and sobbing. Jiwon vomited. Hyunwoo was curled into a ball. Yoonji couldn't stop crying. Bora kept saying we're okay over and over, trying to convince herself. Sungmin stared at nothing, his face blank with trauma. Taeyang held his team, pulling them together, making sure everyone remembered this was just a simulation. Medical staff rushed in with counselors. The humans would need days to recover from the psychological trauma. The simulation had been crueler than anything the coalition normally allowed. But in the observation room, nobody moved. They watched the recordings again and again, unable to process what they had seen. The biological data showed that the humans had been genuinely terrified. This wasn't bravery that came from not feeling fear. This was something else. They knew they were going to die, Silent Winter said slowly. The data shows they accepted death as certain, but they didn't surrender. They weaponized themselves, a Corthan researcher rumbled. They turned fear into rage. They died, but they made sure it cost the enemy. Clicking Thought was very still, his mandibles clicking in a pattern that meant deep thought. It's not rage. Look at the recordings. They were crying. They were comforting each other. They sang together. This wasn't mindless violence. Then what was it, someone asked. Spite, Clicking Thought said, and the translator struggled with the word because most languages didn't have an equivalent. They would rather die fighting than live in surrender. They would rather harm themselves if it means harming their enemy more. They have a concept of mutually assured destruction, and they don't blink first. Another researcher pulled up Earth's history files. Their wars. Look at their wars. The Last Stand at Thermopylae, the Alamo, Masada, Gwangju. There are hundreds of examples throughout their history where humans chose to die fighting rather than surrender, even when surrender would have saved their lives. They're a death world species, Silent Winter observed. They evolved with predators that could kill them easily, so they became the prey that wasn't worth hunting. The prey that fights back. The prey that costs more to kill than the meal is worth. The researchers looked at each other with something that resembled fear. Most species evolved fear to survive. Humans evolved fear to make their deaths expensive. They didn't fight to win. They fought to make winning cost too much. Clicking. Thought made a decision. This footage is now classified. Coalition command only. Nobody outside this room discusses what we saw today. Why? A young researcher asked. Because if potential enemies see this, they might attack Earth preemptively out of fear. And if potential allies see this, they might be too frightened to work alongside humans. We've just learned that humanity doesn't have a surrender mechanism. You can negotiate with them. You can befriend them. But you cannot intimidate them into submission because they'll choose mutual destruction instead. The researchers filed out slowly, each lost in thought. They had asked a simple question: how do humans handle fear? The answer terrified them. Humans handle fear by making sure that anyone who frightens them regrets it. In the medical bay, Taeyang sat with his team. They were recovering slowly, drinking water and trying to forget what the simulation had shown them. A counselor asked Taeyang if he would do anything differently if he faced that scenario again in reality. Taeyang thought for a long moment. Then he said, "No. If humanity dies, we die making it clear that we were here. We die making it hurt. That's how humans die, we don't go quietly." The counselor made notes but didn't argue. What could anyone say to that? The testing chamber looked harmless. It was just a white room with sensors embedded in the walls and a chair in the center. The real danger was in the headset, a device that could create perfect simulations directly in the brain. The aliens called it a neural inducer. The humans called it the nightmare machine. Clicking Thought explained the procedure to the assembled teams. The device will place you in scenarios designed to trigger fear responses. Your vital signs will be monitored. Brain activity will be recorded. The simulation will feel completely real. You may experience physical sensations, including pain. The simulation will end after 10 minutes or when your stress levels become dangerous. You may stop at any time by saying the safe word. The Corthans went first. The simulation showed their greatest fear, a predator from their home world that hunted their ancestors. The massive aliens entered defensive positions immediately, their armor plates locking into place. Their heart rate spiked but quickly stabilized. After 3 minutes, the Corthan warrior charged, attempting to fight the simulated predator. The simulation ended. The warrior emerged breathing hard but composed. The Vishari underwent testing next. Their fear scenarios involved isolation from their telepathic network. The tall aliens showed immediate distress, their mental coordination breaking down. They huddled together, trying to recreate their psychic bonds through physical contact. When the simulation ended, they needed 30 minutes to recover before they could speak. The Silithine, an aquatic species, experienced scenarios of drowning and contaminated water. They scattered in all directions, releasing distress chemicals. Their recovery time was the longest so far. Each species responded according to patterns the researchers recognized. Millions of years of evolution created predictable behaviors: fight, flight, freeze, or flock. The data confirmed what the coalition already knew. Then it was humanity's turn. Ji-won went first because she volunteered. The medic entered the testing chamber with steady steps. The technicians placed the headset carefully, adjusting it for human anatomy. The sensors activated. Ji-won's eyes went distant as the simulation began. The observers watched the data streams with professional interest. Heart rate jumped from 70 beats per minute to 140. Adrenaline flooded her system. Cortisol levels spiked. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. All normal fear responses, all perfectly within expectations. Then something unexpected happened. Ji-won's hands stopped shaking. Her breathing, while fast, became rhythmic. Her heart rate remained elevated but stopped climbing. The brain scan showed activity in regions associated with problem-solving and planning. She was still terrified. The chemical markers proved that, but she was thinking through the fear. The simulation showed her in a damaged medical station. Injured aliens were dying around her. Limited supplies. No help coming. Something dangerous was hunting through the corridors. The scenario was designed to be hopeless. Inside the simulation, Ji-won began to work. She sorted the injured by severity. She used bandages to create tripwires. She mixed chemicals from the medical supplies into something caustic. She broke equipment into sharp pieces. Her hands trembled the entire time, but they never stopped moving. When the simulation ended, Ji-won removed the headset with shaking hands. She was pale and sweating, but she also looked angry. That was a trap scenario, she said. You designed it so nobody could win. Clicking thought tilted his head. Yes. The purpose was to measure your response to hopeless situations. There's no such thing as a hopeless situation, Ji-won said. Just situations where you haven't tried hard enough yet. The researchers exchanged glances. That was not a normal response. Hyunwoo went next. The engineer faced a reactor meltdown scenario. The simulation placed him in a failing ship with a core about to explode. No escape pods, no time to evacuate, certain death in 6 minutes. The researchers expected acceptance or panic. They got neither. Hyunwoo's fear response looked similar to Ji-won's. Initial spike in stress hormones, then stabilization. His brain activity showed something the researchers had never seen before. Parts of his mind associated with fear were active and intense, but instead of shutting down his reasoning, they seemed to accelerate it. Inside the simulation, Hyunwoo refused the scenario's premise. He pulled open panels, rerouted power systems, and created a solution that violated 3 safety protocols but might, possibly, work. When the simulation ended, he looked frustrated. You didn't let me finish. I was only at step 4 of 12. The reactor would have exploded, a technician pointed out. 3% chance it wouldn't have, Hyunwoo replied. That's better than 0. Yoonji faced zero-gravity combat. Sungmin experienced tactical scenarios with no winning moves. Bora endured communication breakdowns during critical moments. Every human showed the same pattern. Terror, then adaptation. Fear, then problem-solving. They never stopped being afraid. They just refused to let fear stop them. By the end of the day, Clicking Thought called an emergency meeting with the other senior researchers. They gathered in a secure observation room and reviewed the footage. This is unprecedented, said a Vishari researcher named Silent Winter. Their fear responses are functioning but not inhibiting. It's as if fear makes them more capable, not less. Look at the brain scans, another researcher added. The amygdala is active, but so are the frontal cortex regions. They're experiencing fear and rational thought simultaneously. Clicking. Thought clicked his mandibles together and thought. Every species we've tested shows one of 3 patterns. Instinct takes over and they fight. Instinct takes over and they flee. Or instinct takes over and they freeze. But humans, they don't let instinct take over at all. They do, Silent Winter corrected. Look at the biological markers. They're feeling everything the other species feel, but they have this ability to function through it. They acknowledge the fear and then ignore its commands. That's not possible, a Corthan researcher rumbled. Fear exists to protect us. It overrides rational thought for a reason. You cannot think your way through a predator attack. You must react. Humans don't, Clicking Thought said quietly. They react and think at the same time. The researchers spent hours reviewing the data. They ran the tests again the next day with new scenarios. The results were consistent. Humans experienced fear normally, all the correct chemicals and neural patterns. But then they did something no other species did. They used it. Fear made Jiwon faster and more decisive. It made Hyunwoo creative and willing to take calculated risks. It made Eunji's reflexes sharper. It made Seungmin see patterns he might otherwise miss. It made Bora more focused. The researchers tried to understand. Fear was supposed to save individuals by making them escape. But human fear seemed designed to save the species by making individuals more dangerous. On the third day of testing, Silent Winter made an observation that changed everything. I've been reviewing Earth's history files. Humans are persistence hunters. They evolved chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They also evolved being hunted by large predators, so their fear response couldn't be simple flight. If they ran, predators caught them. If they froze, predators ate them. If they fought immediately, they died because they were weaker. So what did they do? Clicking Thought asked. They fought while running. They ran while thinking. They thought while afraid. They learned to do everything at once because anything less meant extinction. Their fear doesn't shut down their minds. It speeds them up. The meeting grew quiet. The implications were disturbing. Most species evolved fear to survive. Humans evolved fear to win. They were afraid, but they attacked anyway. They were terrified, but they kept going anyway. They knew they might die, but they tried anyway. Clicking Thought made a decision. We need to run the extinction protocol. The other researchers looked shocked. The extinction protocol was rarely used. It was considered cruel. It showed species scenarios where death was absolutely certain, where no hope existed at all. Most species broke down completely. It revealed nothing useful, just how beings faced the absolute end. That's not necessary, Silent Winter protested. We have enough data. No, Clicking Thought insisted. We need to know what happens when humans face absolute death. Because every other species surrenders, and I don't think humans will. The researchers argued but eventually agreed. The human team was informed about the special test. Taeyang listened to the explanation and then asked, "Is this test required?" "No," Clicking Thought admitted. "It's optional, and it will be psychologically difficult." Taeyang looked at his team. They looked back at him. Some nodded. Others looked scared but determined. "We'll do it," Taeyang said. "If you need to understand us, then you need to see all of us, even the parts that scare you." The test was scheduled for the next morning. That night, the researchers prepared the simulation with care. They had no idea they were about to record the most classified footage in Coalition history. They were the species that would burn everything. The final week of training was different. Taeyang noticed it first. The other species kept their distance now. Not with hostility, but with something that looked like respect mixed with caution. When his team walked through the corridors of Sanctuary 7, conversation stopped. Aliens watched them pass with expressions that the translation software struggled to interpret. The Korthans, who had treated humans as weak curiosities, now nodded when they passed. The Vishari, who barely acknowledged other species, made small gestures of respect. Even the trainers behaved differently, more careful with instructions, more patient with questions. Something had changed after the extinction protocol test, but nobody would explain what. Jiwon mentioned it during their daily meal. The cafeteria was full of different species eating foods in ways that still looked strange to human eyes. "Is it just me, or is everyone acting weird around us?" "They're scared," Seungmin said quietly. He was the most observant of the team, always watching patterns. "Look at the body language. They're not avoiding us because they don't like us. They're avoiding us because we make them nervous. But why?" Bora asked. "We've been polite. We've followed all the rules. We haven't done anything threatening." Hyunwoo pushed his food around his plate. He still had nightmares from the simulation. They all did. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they saw how we handled the test. "We failed that test," Yoonji said softly. "We all died in the simulation." "Did we, though?" Taeyang had been thinking about this. The scenario was unwinnable. Everyone dies in that test. Maybe they're reacting to how we died. Before anyone could respond, Clicking Thought approached their table. The mantis-like aliens' movements were careful, almost hesitant. "Commander Taeyang, may I speak with you privately? It concerns your team's performance and graduation." Taeyang followed the instructor to a small conference room. Through the window he could see Earth hanging in space, blue and beautiful and so far away. He missed home even though he'd only been gone 12 weeks. Clicking Thought settled into a position that might have been sitting. I want to thank you and your team for your service to the program. You have provided invaluable data, but Taeyang sensed there was more. But I must inform you that your test results have been classified. The footage from the extinction protocol is now restricted to Coalition command only. Your psychological profiles have been sealed, and the full details of your performance cannot be shared even with Earth's government without special authorization. Taeyang felt a chill. Why? What did we do wrong? Nothing wrong, clicking thought assured him quickly. The opposite. You did something so right, so true to your nature, that it changed how the Coalition views humanity. I don't understand. The instructor was quiet for a moment, mandibles clicking in thought. Commander, do you know why the Coalition has existed for thousands of years with relatively little major conflict? Because you have good diplomacy. Strong defense? Because every species we've encountered has a submission response. When overwhelmed, they surrender. This allows negotiation, compromise, peace. Even our most aggressive species will back down when facing impossible odds. Clicking thought turned his large eyes toward Taeyang. Your species doesn't have that response. Or if you do, it's buried so deep that even facing extinction couldn't trigger it. Taeyang thought back to the simulation. The terror of knowing Earth was gone, humanity was ending, death was certain, and his team's response: make it count. Make it hurt. Go down fighting. We're not psychotic, Taeyang said carefully. We don't want to die. We prefer peace and negotiation. But if you back us into a corner with no way out, you become the most dangerous beings in known space, clicking thought finished. Not because you're strong, but because you refuse to stop. The footage shows 6 humans who were genuinely terrified, crying, traumatized, but they still turned themselves into weapons. They still made their deaths costly. And when I asked if you would do anything differently, you said no. Would you want us to surrender instead? To give up? I don't know what I want, the instructor admitted. I have trained 43 species over my career. I have seen warriors and predators and survivors. But humans are the first species that treats extinction like a declaration of war. You don't see certain death as the end. You see it as an opportunity to inflict maximum damage. Taeyang felt he should defend humanity, but the instructor wasn't wrong. Human history was full of last stands, desperate battles, and Pyrrhic victories. Humanity had a strange relationship with death. They feared it, but they also weaponized it. What happens now? Taeyang asked. Your team is graduating early with honors. You've completed the program successfully, but I need you to understand what the Coalition learned from testing you. Clicking thought pulled up data on a holographic display. When we test other species for fear responses, we learn how to protect them. When we tested humans, we learned how to never threaten you. You're afraid of us, Taeyang realized. Not afraid, Clicking thought corrected. Concerned, respectful, cautious. Humanity has shown that you make excellent allies because you don't abandon your friends. Your evolution made you loyal to your group, but you've also shown that any species that threatens your extinction will face something terrifying. Not because humans are cruel, but because you've evolved to make your deaths expensive. The instructor continued. The Council has placed special notations in humanity's diplomatic files. You are never to be threatened existentially. Any conflict with humans must leave pathways for negotiation. Because once humans decide they're facing extinction, they stop evaluating odds and start calculating damage. You think we're crazy, Taeyang said. I think you're survivors from a death world. I think your evolution created something unique. Most prey species evolved to run or hide. Most predator species evolved to fight or intimidate. Humans evolved to be prey that hunts back. You're the species that made predators regret hunting you. Clicking thought pulled up historical data from Earth. Your planet has a fascinating predator-prey dynamic. Humans were hunted by larger, stronger animals for millions of years. But humans had tools, fire, and something more dangerous: memory and spite. A predator might successfully hunt one human, but then the human's tribe would track that predator and kill it. Over time, Earth's predators learned that humans were poor prey. The meal wasn't worth the cost. So we're not crazy, Taeyang said. We're just expensive to kill, precisely. And that makes you invaluable as allies but terrifying as enemies. The Council wants to ensure that humanity only ever experiences the first scenario. They stood in silence for a moment, watching Earth through the window. Taeyang thought about his species, about the long road from prey to predator to something in between, about the countless times humanity faced extinction and survived through stubbornness and spite. Can I tell my team about this? Taeyang asked. You can tell them the footage is classified and they performed exceptionally. The rest they probably already know. Humans understand themselves better than we understand you. The graduation ceremony was small and formal. Each team received commendations. The Korthans for strength and tactical ability, the Vishari for coordination and adaptability, the Silithine for endurance, and the humans received a commendation that was carefully worded, for exceptional performance under extreme stress and unwavering determination in impossible circumstances. During the reception afterward, other teams approached the humans cautiously. A young Korthan warrior asked Tai Yang what humans thought about during the extinction test. Tai Yang considered lying, making it sound more noble than it was. But he decided on honesty. We were terrified, he said simply. We cried. Some of us prayed, but we also got angry. The scenario said we were going to die, and we wanted to make sure whoever killed us remembered it. We wanted our deaths to matter. The Korthan warrior made a gesture that translators said meant respect. Among my people, we say that how you die reflects how you lived. Humans die well. We prefer not to die at all, Tai Yang replied. But if we must, then yes, we die making it count. The humans returned to Earth as heroes, though they couldn't explain exactly why. The footage remained classified. The full psychological profile stayed sealed. But word spread quietly through the coalition. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomer species. They were the species you wanted as friends and never as enemies. Years later, when new species joined the coalition, they underwent the same training program. They took the same tests, and when they asked about the humans who graduated years ago, the instructors would pause before answering. Humans are interesting, Clicking Thought would say. They experience fear like everyone else. They just refuse to let it stop them. And if you push them too far, they become something that scares even ancient predator species. Are they dangerous? The new students would ask. Only if you threaten them, the instructor would reply. Treat them well, and they're the best allies you could ask for. But corner them, threaten their survival, and you'll discover that humans have a saying, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. They don't bluff. The footage remained in the Coalition's most secure archives, labeled with warnings about psychological distress. But it served its purpose. It ensued.